Marcus knew something was wrong the moment he stepped through the cemetery gates. He had visited this place every single day for 6 months. 6 months since the funeral. 6 months since they lowered his daughter's small coffin into the ground while rain poured from an angry sky. 6 months since his world ended. Every morning, Marcus walked the same path. Past the tall iron gates. Past the stone angel with the broken wing. Past the old oak tree that dropped acorns on the path. 37 steps to the left. Then straight ahead for another 20 steps. Then there it was, the small granite headstone with her name carved in letters that still looked too sharp, too new. Lily Chambers. 2015 to 2024. Forever in our hearts. Marcus always brought fresh flowers. Sometimes daisies. Sometimes roses. Today, he carried yellow sunflowers because those were her favorites. She used to say they looked like tiny suns that could never burn out. But today, something was different. Marcus stopped walking. His shoes made a crunching sound on the gravel path. He stared at Lily's grave, and his heart began to beat faster. The mound of earth over her grave looked bigger. That's impossible, he whispered to himself. He had been here yesterday morning. He had straightened the flowers in the vase. He had pulled 3 weeds from around the headstone. Everything had been normal. Everything had been the same, as it always was. But now the grave looked taller. The earth had risen up like someone had added more dirt during the night. And the grass was different too. It was greener than before. Not the pale, struggling green of new grass trying to grow. This was a deep, healthy green that looked almost too alive. Marcus felt his hands start to shake. The sunflowers trembled in his grip. It's just your eyes, he told himself. You're tired. You didn't sleep well last night. That was true. He never slept well anymore. Not since the accident. Not since the truck ran the red light. Not since the hospital room where he held her hand and watched the machines go flat and silent. Marcus forced himself to walk closer. He knelt down beside the grave, his knees pressing into the damp grass. He touched the earth with his fingertips. It felt warm, warmer than it should be on a cool October morning. He placed the sunflowers in the metal vase beside the headstone. His hands were still shaking. Hey, Lilybug, he whispered. That was his nickname for her. She used to laugh and say she wasn't a bug, she was a girl. I brought your favorites today. The lady at the flower shop said these ones came from a farm upstate. She said they're extra special. Marcus talked to her every day. He knew she couldn't hear him. He knew she was gone. But talking made him feel less alone. It made him feel like she was still part of his life, even though his life was now an empty house and silent dinners and a bedroom door he couldn't bring himself to open. He stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his pants. He looked at the grave one more time. Yes, it was definitely taller than yesterday. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the cemetery before the sun was fully up. The sky was pink and orange, like someone had spilled paint across the clouds. He almost ran to Lily's grave. His breath caught in his throat. The mound was even higher now. It rose up from the ground like a small hill. And the grass was so green it almost glowed. Thick blades, soft and lush, covered the entire grave. It looked like the grass in the cemetery's oldest sections, the parts that had been growing for 100 years. But Lily had only been buried for 6 months. What is happening? Marcus said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the quiet morning air. He walked around the grave, studying it from every angle. The headstone sat perfectly straight. Nothing looked damaged or disturbed. But the earth had definitely risen. It was at least 3 inches higher than it had been 2 days ago. Marcus felt panic crawling up his throat. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and took pictures. Photo after photo. From different angles. Close-ups of the grass. Wide shots showing the entire grave. He needed proof. He needed to show someone that he wasn't going crazy. His wife Sarah had died 3 years ago from cancer. Lily was all he had left. His daughter, his Lilybug, with her bright laugh and her love of trees and her collection of smooth river stones. She used to tell him that stones were the earth's memories, that they held secrets from millions of years ago. And now something was happening to her grave. Something impossible. Something that made his skin feel cold, even though sweat was running down his back. Marcus knelt down again. He pressed both hands against the earth, pushing down, trying to see if the ground was soft or if there was something underneath making it rise. The earth felt solid, firm, but warm. Always warm, like something alive was breathing underneath. "Please," he whispered. "Please let this be nothing. Please let me be wrong." But he wasn't wrong. He knew he wasn't wrong. By the end of the week, Marcus couldn't deny it anymore. The grave was growing. Each day, it rose a little higher. Each day, the grass became thicker and greener. And now there were other changes too. Small wildflowers had started blooming around the edges of the grave. Tiny purple and white flowers that Marcus had never seen in the cemetery before. The other graves nearby looked normal. Gray grass, flat earth, silent and still, the way graves were supposed to be. Only Lily's grave was alive. Marcus stopped sleeping entirely. He lay awake at night in his empty house, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what could be happening. His mind went to dark places. Terrible places. Was something wrong with the coffin? Was the ground shifting? Was there water underneath, pushing everything up? Or worse, was someone doing something to the grave? Was someone disturbing his daughter's resting place? That thought made him sick to his stomach. It made him want to scream and break things and demand answers from someone, anyone who could explain this nightmare. On Friday morning, Marcus didn't bring flowers. He brought a measuring tape. He measured the grave's height from the ground. 12 inches. A full foot higher than it should be. He measured the width of the grass. It had spread beyond the original borders of the grave, creeping outward like green fingers reaching for the sun. Marcus took more pictures. He wrote notes on his phone. He documented everything with shaking hands and a racing heart. Then he stood up, looked at Lily's headstone, and made a decision. "I'm going to find out what's happening, Lilybug," he said. His voice was hard and determined. "I promise you, whatever this is, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to protect you. Even now. Even here." The wind blew through the cemetery, rustling the leaves of distant trees. For just a moment, Marcus thought he heard something. A whisper. A laugh. The sound of a little girl's voice saying, "It's okay, Daddy." But when he turned around, there was nothing there. Just rows of silent graves and the pink morning sky and the impossible, beautiful, terrifying green mound rising from the earth where his daughter slept. Marcus walked away from the cemetery with his jaw clenched and his fists tight. He was going to get answers, no matter what it took. The cemetery office smelled like old paper and coffee. Marcus stood at the front desk, gripping his phone so hard his knuckles turned white. On the screen were dozens of photos of Lily's grave, each one showing the impossible growth that no one else seemed to notice. "I need to speak to someone about my daughter's grave," Marcus said. His voice came out louder than he meant it to. "Something is wrong. Something is very wrong." The woman behind the desk looked up from her computer. She had gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. Her name tag said Barbara. "Sir, please calm down," Barbara said gently. "What seems to be the problem?" "The problem?" Marcus almost laughed, but it came out sounding broken. "The problem is that my daughter's grave is growing. It's rising up from the ground. The grass is too green. There are flowers that shouldn't be there. And every day it gets worse." Barbara's face showed concern, but also something else. Doubt. She thought he was crazy. Marcus could see it in her eyes. "Mr. Chambers, I understand you're upset," she began. "I'm not upset." Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. The sound echoed through the quiet office. "I'm telling you the truth. Look at these pictures. Look." He thrust his phone toward her, swiping through the photos frantically. Barbara leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Sir, graves can sometimes settle unevenly," she said slowly. "Weather, soil conditions, root systems from nearby trees. All of these things can affect how the ground looks. It's perfectly natural." "Natural?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. "This isn't natural. This is the opposite of natural. Graves are supposed to sink down, not grow up. They're supposed to fade and flatten, not turn into. He couldn't finish. He didn't have words for what Lily's grave had become. Barbara stood up. Let me get Mr. Patterson. He's our head groundskeeper. He'll be able to explain better than I can. She disappeared through a door behind the desk, leaving Marcus standing there, breathing hard, feeling like the walls were closing in on him. Mr. Patterson was a tall man with sun-weathered skin and dirt under his fingernails. He looked like someone who had spent his whole life working with earth and grass and the quiet spaces where the dead rested. Mr. Chambers, he said, extending his hand. Marcus shook it automatically. Barbara tells me you're concerned about your daughter's plot. Concerned? Marcus's voice cracked. It's growing. Every single day. It's growing. Can you explain that? Mr. Patterson's face remained calm.
Too calm.
Like he had dealt with grieving parents before and knew exactly what to say. Come on, he said. Let's walk out there together. I'll take a look. They walked through the cemetery in silence. Marcus led the way, his feet moving automatically along the path he knew by heart. Past the iron gates. Past the broken angel.
Past the oak tree.
When they reached Lily's grave, Marcus stopped and pointed.
There, he said.
Look at it. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm imagining it. Mr. Patterson walked slowly around the grave, hands in his pockets. He bent down, touched the grass, examined the headstone. He took his time, and with every second that passed, Marcus felt his heart beat faster. Finally, Mr. Patterson straightened up. Well, he said carefully, the grass is certainly healthy. Healthy. Marcus felt anger surge through him like fire. It's more than healthy. It's impossible. Look at the other graves. Look at them. They're brown and flat and dead-looking. But this one is alive. Mr. Chambers. And it's taller, Marcus interrupted. Measure it. I measured it. It's a full foot higher than it should be. How do you explain that? Mr. Patterson sighed. He took off his cap and rubbed his head, like he was trying to choose his words carefully. Sometimes roots from nearby trees can push up through the ground, he said. We've got several large oaks in this section. Their root systems spread far underground. It's possible a root found its way to your daughter's plot and is causing the soil to rise. Marcus shook his head.
No.
No, that doesn't make sense. Why would it be so green? Why would there be wildflowers? Why? The flowers could be seeds carried by birds or wind, Mr. Patterson said. As for the grass, well, sometimes certain spots just get more nutrients. Maybe there's a natural spring underneath, or the soil composition is different. Nature is unpredictable, Mr. Chambers. Every explanation sounded reasonable, logical, like something a sensible person would believe. But Marcus wasn't feeling sensible. He was feeling desperate and afraid and angry at everyone who looked at him like he was losing his mind. I want the grave opened, Marcus said suddenly. The words hung in the air between them like a gunshot. Mr. Patterson's eyes widened. I'm sorry, what? I want the grave opened, Marcus repeated, his voice steady now, hard as stone. I want to know what's underneath. I want to see what's causing this. Mr. Chambers, that's a very serious request. Mr. Patterson's calm voice finally showed a crack of concern. Opening a grave requires permits, legal authorization, family consent forms. It's not something we can just do because... Because what? Because a grieving father is worried? Because something impossible is happening and no one will give me a real answer? Marcus stepped closer to the groundskeeper, his voice dropping low and fierce. That's my daughter down there. My little girl. And something is happening to her grave that no one can explain. Not really. Not in a way that makes sense. So yes, I want it opened. I want to see. I need to see. Mr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, glancing between Marcus and the grave. I'll need to speak with the cemetery director, he said finally. This kind of request, it's complicated. There are rules, procedures. I don't care about rules, Marcus shouted. His voice echoed across the cemetery, disturbing the perfect quiet. I care about my daughter. I care about whatever is happening right here, Right now, on the ground where we laid her to rest. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The wind rustled through the grass, making it wave like green water. "I'll see what I can do," Mr. Patterson said quietly. "But, Mr. Chambers, I want you to prepare yourself. Sometimes when we dig into the ground looking for answers, we don't like what we find." 3 days later, Marcus received a phone call. "Mr. Chambers? This is Director Walsh from Pine Hills Cemetery. I've been informed of your request to examine Plot 247C. After reviewing your documentation and photographs, we've decided to grant your request. The exhumation will take place tomorrow at dawn, before other visitors arrive." Marcus's hands shook as he held the phone. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." That night, Marcus didn't even try to sleep. He sat in Lily's room for the first time in months, surrounded by her things. Her books about nature and animals. Her collection of river stones arranged on the windowsill. Her drawings of trees. She had loved to draw trees, filling page after page with trunks and branches and leaves. "I'm sorry, Lilybug," he whispered to the dark room. "I'm sorry if this is wrong. But I have to know. I have to understand." Dawn came cold and gray. Marcus arrived at the cemetery to find a small crew already there. Mr. Patterson, Director Walsh, and 2 workers with shovels stood near Lily's grave. There was also a large machine, a small excavator, parked nearby. "Mr. Chambers," Director Walsh said, shaking his hand. She was a short woman with kind eyes. "Before we begin, I need you to understand that this is highly unusual. We're doing this because your documentation showed legitimate concerns. But you need to be prepared for what we might find." "I'm prepared," Marcus lied. The workers started digging. First with shovels, carefully removing the impossibly green grass in neat squares. Then with the excavator, scooping away earth in controlled, measured movements. Marcus watched, barely breathing. The earth came away in dark, rich clumps. Not gray cemetery soil, but deep brown dirt that looked healthy and alive. And as they dug deeper, something became visible. Roots. Not the thin, spidery roots of grass. Not the thick, woody roots of old trees. These were young roots. Fresh roots. White and strong and growing in every direction like reaching fingers. "Stop," Mr. Patterson said suddenly, holding up his hand. The excavator went quiet. He jumped down into the shallow hole they'd dug and knelt down. Carefully, gently, he brushed away dirt with his hands. Marcus leaned forward, his heart hammering. Mr. Patterson pulled something from the earth. Something small and delicate. A sapling. A tiny tree, no bigger than his hand, with roots that spread deep into the ground. Roots that went down, down, down toward where Lily's coffin rested. "There's your answer," Mr. Patterson said softly, holding up the fragile plant. "Someone planted a tree." Marcus stared at the sapling, at its small green leaves, at its thin trunk, at its roots that had pushed through the earth, making the grave rise, making the grass grow, making life bloom in a place of death. And then, like a wave crashing over him, Marcus remembered. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees in the damp grass, his whole body shaking. Because he suddenly knew exactly what this tree meant, and why someone had planted it here. Marcus couldn't breathe. He knelt there in the grass beside the open grave, staring at the tiny sapling in Mr. Patterson's hands, and suddenly he was somewhere else. Somewhere 3 years ago. It was spring. Lily was only 6 years old. They had taken a walk through the park, just the 2 of them, because Sarah was in the hospital again getting treatments. Lily had been so quiet lately, so serious. She understood more than a 6-year-old should about sickness and medicine, and the fact that her mommy might not get better. They sat under a huge oak tree, bigger than any tree Marcus had ever seen. Its branches spread out like arms trying to hug the whole sky. "Daddy," Lily had asked, picking at the grass with her small fingers, "what happens when we die?" Marcus's heart had broken a little. He pulled her close. "Well, some people believe different things, Lilybug. What do you think happens?" She looked up at the massive tree above them. "I think we become part of something," she said softly. "Like trees. Trees die, but then they feed the ground, and new trees grow from the same dirt. So they never really leave. They just change into something else. Something that keeps living. Marcus had hugged her tight, fighting back tears. That's beautiful, sweetie. When I die, Lily said, and Marcus's chest had tightened because she was only 6 and shouldn't be thinking about death. I want to be a tree. I want to grow tall and give shade to people and drop acorns for squirrels. I want to be something that stays, even after I'm gone. You're not going anywhere, Marcus had whispered fiercely. Not for a very, very long time. But he'd been wrong. Now, kneeling beside her grave, Marcus understood. Who planted it? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Who put this tree here? Director Walsh stepped forward, holding a clipboard. She flipped through some papers, her finger running down a list. According to our records, she said slowly, there was a request filed right after the burial. A woman named Mrs. Chun. She was Lily's teacher. She requested permission to place a memorial sapling at the gravesite. We approved it. It's not uncommon for families to plant small trees or shrubs near graves. Mrs. Chun. Marcus remembered her at the funeral. Lily's second-grade teacher with a kind smile and the glasses that were always slipping down her nose. She had cried harder than almost anyone. She had held Marcus's hands and told him that Lily was the brightest light in her classroom, that she talked about trees and nature all the time, that she had dreams of becoming a forest ranger when she grew up. She knew, Marcus whispered. Mrs. Chun knew what Lily wanted. He looked down at the sapling's roots, spreading deep into the earth. Growing. Reaching. Living. This wasn't a disturbance. This wasn't something wrong or terrible or frightening. This was a gift. This was Lily still here in the only way she could be. Marcus started crying. Not the quiet tears he'd cried at the funeral, but huge, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside him. He cried for his daughter, who loved trees. He cried for his wife, who never got to see Lily grow up. He cried for all the years of birthday parties and graduations and weddings that would never happen. But he also cried because, for the first time in 6 months, he felt something other than emptiness. He felt hope. Put it back, Marcus said suddenly, looking up at Mr. Patterson through his tears. Please. Put the tree back. Let it grow. Director Walsh looked uncertain. Mr. Chambers, cemetery regulations state that. Please, Marcus interrupted, his voice breaking. This is what she wanted. This is what my daughter wanted. To be part of something living. To keep growing. To not just disappear into the ground and be forgotten. He stood up, brushing dirt and tears from his face. She used to tell me that trees were immortal, Marcus continued. Not the individual tree, but the life it creates. One tree drops seeds, and those seeds become new trees, and those trees drop more seeds. On and on forever. She said that's what real immortality looks like. Not living forever yourself, but creating life that continues after you're gone. The cemetery crew stood silent, watching him. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Mr. Patterson looked at Director Walsh. Something unspoken passed between them. We'll need to make some adjustments to the plot boundaries, Director Walsh said finally. And you'll need to sign some paperwork.
But, yes.
We can let it grow. We can let your daughter's tree grow. They carefully replanted the sapling. They filled the earth back and around its roots, gently, like tucking a child into bed. They replaced the healthy grass in neat squares, covering the disturbed ground. When they finished, the grave looked almost the same as it had an hour ago. Still tall. Still impossibly green. Still covered with a tiny purple and white wildflowers. But now Marcus understood. Now he knew that every inch of growth, every bright blade of grass, every bloom was Lily saying, I'm still here, Daddy. I'm still growing. I'm still part of the world. The crew packed up their equipment and left, giving Marcus privacy. He stood alone beside the grave, looking at the small green shoots pushing through the grass where the sapling lived underneath. Hey, Lilybug, he said softly. I understand now. I'm sorry it took me so long. He knelt down and touched the earth, the same earth that had terrified him just days ago. Now it felt warm and alive and right. Mrs. Chen gave you what I couldn't, he continued. She remembered what you wanted. She made sure you got to be part of something that keeps living. Marcus pulled a water bottle from his bag. Slowly, carefully, he poured water over the grave, feeding the hidden sapling below. I'm going to take care of you, he promised. I'm going to water you, every day. I'm going to pull the weeds away so you have room to grow. And someday, maybe not this year, or even next year, but someday, you're going to be a real tree. A big, strong tree with branches that reach for the sky. He smiled through fresh tears. And maybe kids will climb your branches. Maybe people will have picnics in your shade. Maybe birds will build nests in your leaves, and squirrels will collect your acorns, just like you wanted. The wind blew through the cemetery, rustling grass and distant trees. And Marcus could have sworn, he really could have sworn, that he heard his daughter's laugh carried on the breeze. That bright, bubbling laugh that used to fill their house with joy. Every day after that, Marcus came to the cemetery. But now he didn't just bring flowers. He brought water. He brought plant food. He brought small gardening tools to carefully tend the earth around the sapling. He watched as the tree grew. Slowly at first, so slowly he couldn't see the changes day to day. But week by week, month by month, the small shoots became a thin trunk. The trunk sprouted branches. The branches grew leaves. Other visitors to the cemetery started noticing. They would stop and stare at the unusual grave, the one covered in lush grass and wildflowers, the one with a young tree growing right in the center. It's beautiful, a woman said to Marcus one morning. She was visiting her husband's grave nearby. I've never seen anything like it. What kind of tree is it? Marcus smiled. It's an oak tree. My daughter loved oaks. She said they were the strongest, longest living trees. She said they were proof that life goes on. The woman touched her heart. Your daughter was very wise. Yes, Marcus said proudly. Yes, she was. 2 years passed. The tree grew taller than Marcus. Its trunk was as thick as his arm. Its branches spread wide, creating a small circle of shade over Lily's grave. In spring, it burst with fresh green leaves. In fall, it dropped acorns that squirrels happily collected. Marcus still came every single day. But now he didn't cry anymore. Now he sat in the tree's shade and told Lily about his day. About the birds he'd seen that morning. About the book he was reading. About the neighbor's new puppy that reminded him of the dog Lily had always wanted. He told her about the support group he'd joined for grieving parents. About the volunteer work he'd started at the children's hospital, reading stories to sick kids. About the scholarship fund he'd created in her name for students who wanted to study environmental science. You're still changing the world, Lilybug, he told the tree. You're still making things grow. Other families started asking if they could plant trees at their loved ones' graves too. The cemetery created a new section called the Memorial Grove, where small trees could be planted instead of traditional headstones. Marcus helped other grieving parents choose their trees and plant them. He taught them how to water and care for them. He told them about Lily and her dream of becoming a forest that would outlive her. Death doesn't have to be the end, he told them. It can be a different kind of beginning. A beginning that keeps growing and changing and living year after year. 5 years after Lily's death, Marcus stood beneath her tree on what would have been her 14th birthday. The oak was magnificent now. Taller than 2 men. Strong and healthy, with a thick trunk and branches that swayed in the wind. Birds nested in its leaves. Children visiting other graves sometimes asked if they could climb it. Marcus always said yes. He had brought birthday cupcakes, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, her favorite. He set them on a small bench he'd placed beside the tree. Happy birthday, sweetheart, he said, looking up at the leaves dancing against the blue sky. 14 years old. You be in high school now. Probably driving me crazy asking for a cell phone and permission to go to the mall with your friends. He smiled, imagining it. The teenager she never got to become. But you know what? He continued. I think you're exactly where you wanted to be. You're growing strong and tall. You're providing shade and shelter. You're creating life. All those acorns, all those baby trees that will grow from your seeds. You're doing exactly what you said you wanted to do. You're living forever. Marcus placed his hand on the tree's trunk, feeling the rough bark under his palm, feeling the life pulsing through the wood, feeling his daughter's presence in every leaf and branch. I miss you every single day, he whispered. But I'm not sad anymore, because I know you're still here. Every time I see this tree, every time I sit in its shade, every time I watch it grow a little bit taller, I know you're still with me. A leaf fell from above, spiraling down through the air to land in Marcus's open hand. It was green and perfect, shaped like a tiny star. Marcus held it carefully, like holding something precious and fragile and infinitely valuable. Thank you, Lilybug, he said. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't end. It just changes form. It just keeps growing. He sat down on the bench and ate a cupcake in the shade of his daughter's tree. The sun filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Birds sang in the branches above. The wind whispered through the grass. And Marcus felt, for the first time since the accident, truly at peace. His daughter was gone, but she was also here, growing, living, creating new life that would continue long after Marcus himself was gone. Some legacies aren't buried in the ground. Some legacies take root and grow and spread and touch the sky. Some legacies last forever. The end. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a reminder that love and memory can take root and grow, even in the darkest times. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate the beautiful, unexpected ways that life continues, and how the ones we love never truly leave us. What would you plant to honor someone you've lost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow a forest of memories together.